Today we talk about a very special Upchurch, a member of the colonial Upchurch family in America. I refer to Nathan Upchurch I, who was born in 1760 and died in 1835, both in North Carolina. In this part one, we'll give you a part of the story of this individual. I'll give you an overview now. He was born and he died in North Carolina. He was a member of the 5th generation of the family in America. He was a great-great-grandson of Michael Upchurch I, the original immigrant to come to America from England. He was head of Upchurch clan number 3. He was the son of Richard Upchurch II, head of the Moccasin branch of the Upchurch family in America. And he was one of 11 children who headed 11 clans. That is to say, they headed 11 of the total of 22 clans in America. He was a Revolutionary War soldier, and not to be overlooked, he was my great-great-grandfather. I'm very proud of him, but I share this pride with tens of thousands of other individuals who also trace their heritage back to Nathan Upchurch I. Let's go to the colonial Upchurch chart for the family in America, and covers the first 5 generations, and make sure we understand how he fits into the family. You see the chart here with the blue arrow pointing to Nathan Upchurch I, along with his siblings listed there, and showing that he is a son of Richard Upchurch II, head of the Moccasin Creek branch of the family, and that is a great-great-grandson of Michael Upchurch I. We turn now to a map which will help us with the several aspects of Nathan Upchurch and his relatives. It will help us talk about where he was born. It'll help us define the Moccasin Creek enclave of the family, which is very important. And it will help us divide the life of Nathan Upchurch I into his early life and to his later life, where he lived in different parts of North Carolina. Let's describe this map in broad detail. It's similar to the map you may have seen before, in that we have a number of counties listed here in north-central North Carolina. The top 3 you see are Warren, Granville, and Franklin, and they were counties that originally were taken from the big Granville County that was created in 1746. At that same time, in 1746, a large county just south of there was created by the name of Johnson County. Subsequently, Johnson was divided into 2 counties, the western part being Wake and the southern part being Johnson. Now, there are a couple of things I'd like to put aside here on this chart, and we'll return to them later. One is the question of Vance County, which is highlighted in yellow there. Now, Vance County was taken from the nearby counties, but it wasn't formed until 1881. It's highlighted in yellow, and you see that is sort of taken out of the heart of the side of those various counties. I want to set it aside because it's not relevant to the things we talk about today in the Revolutionary period and the early 1800s. But if you're looking at a current day map, you'll see Vance County, and you might wonder how it fits into the picture. And the story is for us today, not at all. Another aspect we'll set aside is on the left-hand side of that chart, you'll see the Upchurch enclave on Chatham and Wake County lines. We'll return to that a little later. But for the moment, let's address ourselves to how these counties changed their lines. We are very fortunate in that we have a great deal of important information, hundreds of citations about Upchurches in this general area you see here, these several counties. The thing that is a challenge for us is that these county lines changed in peculiar ways, which means that if you're looking in the records and you think you have a citation that clearly shows someone is in Franklin County, He may not have been Franklin County at that point in time. He may actually have been in Butte County, or later he might show up in Butte County. So let's think about how the county lines changed. In 1764, this large Granville County was divided into two parts. The western part became Granville, as you see in the map, and the eastern part became not Warren and Franklin, as you see, but became Butte County. And it remained Butte County for 15 years, for the period 1764 to 1779. At the same time, we then were having changes in the southern part of the county. And it has to do with whether or not a little triangle down there, I call the high ground triangle, was in one county or another. Now, I call this the high ground triangle, that's my own invention, because it's a nice, smooth area on a plateau up between two creeks, Moccasin Creek and Norris Creek. And it's on this plateau where so many Upchurches lived and living today. But the problem with this pesky little triangle is it kept moving itself back and forth from one county to the other, while the land and the people stayed right there, but the county names changed. So here's how it worked out. This little triangle from 1746 to 1771 was in Johnson County, the big county that formed Johnson and Wake. From 1771 to 1787, it was in Wake County. And from 1787 on until today, it was moved back into Franklin County. So we'll now mention this more than once because these divisions make a difference about where we think our ancestors were at a given point in time. Now, we want to address the issue of where Nathan Upchurch was born. And let's see what we have on the record. It's very confusing. He is said to have been born in Brunswick County, Virginia. That's not so. We assume he was born in 1760. We're fairly firm on that, plus or minus 1 year. And his family had already been in North Carolina a number of years at that point in time. Now, he did have older siblings that were born in Brunswick County, Virginia, and that's probably how the mistake got started. But beyond this, it gets more strange. He was reported to have been born in Granville County, Butte County, Franklin County, Wake County, and Johnson County. Now, if he was born in all those counties, his mother had to do a lot of moving around. Let's describe the dates here on how he might have been fitted into the picture. Let's take, for example, that he was not born in Butte County because Butte County wasn't formed until 1764, and he was born in 1760. He was not born in Franklin County because Franklin County was not formed until 1779. Now we come to the final quandary. Was he born in the high ground or north of the high ground? North, south of the dotted line, or north of the dotted line? If he was born north of the dotted line, then the circumstances dictate that he would have been born in what was then called Granville County. It will have been the big Granville County, but as we've noted, the big Granville County never reached as far down as grabbing that high triangle area. If he was born south of the high ground line, he would have been born in Johnson County. So we have our choice to make between Granville and Johnson, and that's as far as we can take it at this point in time. I leave this all as a quandary for us all to study more and to learn more and more about pinning down where Nathan Upchurch I was actually born, now that we've eliminated some of the possibilities. I'd like to go then to the West book, as we often do, Cousin Eddabelle West, and see what she has to say about Nathan Upchurch. Now, she did not give a lot of attention to Nathan because her book was mainly about Nathan's brother Moses, who was her ancestor. And she devoted only 3 pages, pages 78, 79, and 80, to Nathan, of whom we speak today. And I'd like to show you here some of the paragraphs of those 3 pages, starting with the early ones, but not going to the complete end. And I'd like to read you a few tidbits of what she has to say about Richard Upchurch II. About Nathan Upchurch I. In paragraph 3, she says Richard Upchurch, and there she refers actually to Richard Upchurch II, first bought land in Wake County, North Carolina in 1778, and his son Nathan had apparently moved there with him as he was drafted from that county for service in the Revolution in 1780. This tour lasted 9 months. He married Mackie Johnson during this same year. The exact date is not known. Well, the fact is that the high ground was in Wake County in the period 1771 to 1787, so this date is correct. It places Richard Upchurch II and his son Nathan I in the high ground area in what would have then been Wake County. Now, whether or not they had just moved there or whether or not actually Richard Upchurch II got there in 1755, which is the first time we find him on the tax rolls, but at that time it definitely was tax rolls in Granville County, so we tend to think that Richard Upchurch II did not get to the high ground area right away, but probably owned a piece of land north of there, and then as Bell West intimates, that Richard Upchurch II and the rest of his family moved south of the high ground at a certain point in time prior to 1778. Now, Nathan actually served twice in the Revolution, and in paragraph 4, Bell West intimates this, and we have a lot of detail on his Revolutionary War service, but I'll just briefly read what she has written here. She says, towards the end of the war, Nathan was again drafted at the Wake County Courthouse under Captain Alsley High and placed under the command of Colonel Wooten. They were engaged in harassing the Tories. In Nathan's own words, in his pension application, we were marching towards Wilmington, North Carolina, undertaking to bring the Tories into an engagement, and while preparing for same, we heard that Cornwallis had been captured in Yorktown. We were ordered by a captain to fire a salute in appreciation of our victory. The Tories came out from a deserted town with a flag of truce, and General Butler allowed them to leave without molestation. We marched 18 miles to receive money to take us home. We received nothing but a discharge. This tour lasted three months. Now, there's much more we can say about Nathan's Revolutionary War service, but we'll leave it there for the moment. In paragraph 5, she mentions that Nathan purchased 150 acres of land on the waters of Moccasin Creek in Wake County from Julius Johnson. This deed was recorded in 1787. Now, what is interesting about that is that there's a possibility that this Julius Johnson could have been the father of the Mackie Johnson who has been said in an earlier paragraph to have married Nathan Upchurch I. Presumably Julius would have thought enough of his son-in-law to sell him a piece of land at a favorable price. I tend to think that piece of land was on the west side of the Moccasin Creek, but I'm not absolutely sure. Then we find another tract of land that Nathan was involved with, and paragraph 6 says, during the 1880s and 1890s, Nathan was active in the affairs of the county. Now, do you see the mistake there? The fact is that Bell West is recorded as 1880 and 1890. She meant 1780 and 1790, and I will forgive her for this error if you'll forgive me when I occasionally make a similar error. At any rate, the fact is that we have a great many citations where Nathan was involved in the life of the community in which he lived. He was on the committee to lay out roads, he's witnessed deeds, he served as a juror, and he was cited in many, many cases. He's on the taxpayer roll and so on. We'll not go into all the detail on that, but I'll just note in her paragraph 6 here, she says he appeared on the tax list of Wake County in 1792 with 2 polls and 250 acres of land. Now, paragraph 7 refers to another piece of land he was involved with. It says on the 17th of September 1794, his father, Richard Upchurch, that is Richard Upchurch II, made a deed of gift for consideration of divers good causes, but more especially for the natural love and tender affection that I bear my son Nathan Upchurch, I do hereby devise, give, bequeath, convey, and confirm to my son Nathan Upchurch all my right, title, and interest in the land and plantation whereon I now live. Now, I feel that that particular piece of land is the 100 acres that is in actual Franklin County today. And we have previously shown a map of that, and we'll show it again when we talk about Nathan's brother, Richard Upchurch III, because he owned land adjoining that. Now, we come to the point at which Nathan is going to leave the Moccasin Creek enclave. And we turn again to our map that we had shown earlier. And this time we have a blue arrow over on the enclave on the Chatham and Wake border. Now the fact is that not only did Nathan leave, but his brother Moses left. This is a strange thing, and we don't know why. We'll have to speculate on why they left. Both of them had married in Franklin County, and their children were now grown. And they moved all of their children, both of them, to the Wake-Chatham border along about 1803. I always look for possibilities that they kept some kind of connection back with Franklin County. I've never found any for Nathan, but with Moses I have at least two of his children that seem to have married people in the Franklin County area. Now, what are the other circumstances surrounding this move? One is that a bit of evidence we have is that Nathan sold 330 acres of land to Matthew Strickland on the branches of Moccasin Creek in preparation for his move. And with regard to Moses, we found he also sold 400 acres of land in the high ground triangle. And we find a record of him in 1803 buying 555 acres of land on the Wake-Chatham line from Joel Cook. It actually was just over the line in Chatham. We find Nathan Upchurch I buying his land at Green Level, and in fact he owned all of Green Level in the surrounding area. But the deed books that related to those purchases were burned, and we have to rely on other kinds of information about it. Now, we're prepared to tell you more about both Moses and Nathan and this enclave on the Wake-Chatham border, but there are just a few things we'll tell you before closing this out and reserving this other material for part 2. Let's go back to the issue of the wife of Nathan Upchurch. We've reported already that West says that he married Mackie Johnson in 1780. But as a surprise to us, there appeared in a newspaper article which we've surfaced. The article appeared in 1833 and reads as follows. Upchurch died on the 19th of cancer. Mrs. Agatha Upchurch, wife of Nathan Upchurch of this county, that is Wake, in the 69th year of her age. Now, looking at the dates, if she was 69 when she died in 1833, she would have been born in 1764, which would have been okay. Now we've got two candidates for the wife of Nathan Upchurch, and no way really to sort them out. To make the plot a little thicker about Agatha and how she fits in the picture, I turned to a will we've discovered by a certain John Butler. He wrote his will in 1894 in Franklin County, North Carolina, and in this will he identifies his daughter as Agatha Butler Upchurch. So there you are. Now we've got some evidence that he married Mackie and some that married Agatha. It's a little difficult to figure out that he might have had two wives, although that's a possibility. We'll just have to leave this as a degree of uncertainty as to who was actually his wife. Now, in closing, I would like to close with a personal experience that I had, which is as follows. This is from item 43 in the biofile of Nathan Upchurch I, and it is a record of a sojourn of myself, called RPU, in July 1983 to North Carolina. And this excerpt reads as follows. On Sunday, 17 July 1983, that's 20 years ago, RPU and John Lee Upchurch Jr. stood at the Green Level Baptist Church in Wake County, North Carolina, and speculated on the location of the Nathan Upchurch I family cemetery. Looking south, one sees a prospective site in a grove of trees that protrudes into the field. On the 18th, Albert Murray Council Sr. said he owned the grove and that his grandfather and his uncle told him that there was a family cemetery there and that it should not be plowed. Albert remembers a graveyard there with markers from years past, but none are there now. He says the frame house just west of the crossroads on the north side of the road is over 100 years old and it was built in sections a few years ago. Albert tore down an old kitchen associated with the frame house. Albert says there were brick kilns across the road from the frame house. It seems likely that the Nathan Upchurch I home site was where the frame house now stands. It is highly likely that the grove behind this frame house was the Nathan Upchurch I family cemetery. I'll leave you with this note.